You don't talk too much about politics, but when you do, it's very, very left-leaning.
The problem of climate change is innovation acceleration. The technologies are not good enough.
Maybe we don't win this, but we're not going to win it if we don't try.
Welcome to the Aussie Wire. My name is Edina Dixon. I am not Topher Field. Topher returned from the United States feeling a little under the weather. So while he was there at the Students for Liberty conference, he managed to have more insightful interviews with more attendees of the conference. And in this particular episode, we're bringing you 3 more interviews around why freedom is important to these people, but also then why they're important to us. We hope you enjoy this episode, and we certainly hope that we'll see Topher's Field in the next.
Well, welcome back to our continuing coverage of the Students for Liberty conference here at the Grand Hyatt in Washington, D.C. I have for you not one, not two, but in fact 3 guests, but still only 2 microphones. So you'll have to forgive us as we shout over each other, trying to be heard by the couple of microphones that are distributed amongst us. Ladies, tell me a bit about where you're from, why you're here.
So we're sisters from Toronto, Canada.
Okay.
My name's Edina. My name's Ronesca.
My name's Nicola.
And we're members of the U of T Conservatives.
Okay. So, university level students or a mix between you or?
So I'm in grad school.
Yep.
So I'm undergrad.
Yep.
Undergrad as well.
Okay, yeah. Love it. So you've come from Toronto to Washington, D.C. I'm guessing that's because there isn't really an equivalent in Canada to what happens here?
Not exactly.
Yeah, I think just like a, or sorry.
No, go on.
Like one good example, we just came out of the main hall and listened to a debate. I think that's a wonderful example of something that we have not seen happen on our campus, and I think that's just it's a beautiful testament, really, to what type of discourse we should be having. We should be debating. We should be talking about our diverse opinions.
Are you representative of your friendship group? Are you outliers within your sort of worlds in Toronto?
For me, I'm an engineering student,
Okay.
and within my program, I'd say you don't talk too much about politics, but when you do, it's very, very left-leaning, we definitely sit more on like the right side of the spectrum. So it's actually true that sometimes I've actually had friends kind of find out that I was a conservative and be like surprised and taken aback, which is interesting that you have to feel that way about just like political views.
Yeah, well, I would say, aside from not talking about it so much within certain disciplines, there's essentially an epidemic right now on Canadian campuses. And I think this is true in many other countries, not just Canada, but I can say from experience that it's very true in Canada that people who don't necessarily agree with the mainstream accepted ideas just don't speak their mind, in part because they don't want to be penalized by their professors, by their peers. They're worried about career concerns, and this leads to a lot of political polarization on campus, and some people feeling very like they're not being heard, as well as the dominant voice just getting stronger and stronger because there's nobody there to oppose it. So I think from a standpoint of the kind of social change that I hope to see on campus, it's just a matter of people who do think differently about certain topics speaking out about them so that we can have that open discussion and different viewpoints can be heard so that we can come to more resolutions about these kinds of things as well.
So what's the appeal to coming here in the first place? Is it the speakers? Is it the networking? Is it just a chance to come to DC and, thriving metropolis of DC and the great nightlife here? No, what's the actual appeal? Why have you made the trip?
I think there's just isn't really an equivalent that I am aware of, at least in Canada, to have so many open-minded students from diverse political perspectives that want to speak out, that want to talk to each other. It's already been lovely, beyond even hearing the speakers, just talking to students we don't get those types of interactions, I think, in Canada oftentimes. I'm not saying always, but so that was sort of what attracted us to come.
But also just the speakers and learning more about things that we're already interested in, and then hearing about new topics that might be new points of interest in the future. It's just been really great to be hearing it in a setting like this, because that's not something that comes to you in Canada especially, but just in general.
Yeah.
So do any of you have plans to become active, or maybe you already are, in this space and try and influence culture and influence politics, or is this more of an academic something that's of interest, but not necessarily a career pathway or a passion in that sense.
I mean, I won't speak for them, but at least not for myself. I don't have political aspirations. It's just honestly, again, like I absolutely knew nothing about politics, nor was I interested in it prior to the pandemic. I think, yeah, I speak for all three of us when that was sort of a catalyst when we started paying attention and then becoming also interested in it. So for me, at least, it's just an interest. Yeah.
Yeah, no, similar for myself. It was never my plan to really pursue or be active in this kind of space, but during the pandemic, honestly, the way that Canada dealt with it and the way that Canadian campuses dealt with it was something that, to be honest, I just didn't really want to be complacent in that kind of culture and feeling like I was a part of that problem. And at that point, I also started to seek out connections with other people that thought critically about these kinds of issues and have really, really enjoyed being a member of these kinds of communities.
Yeah.
And even if I can pursue the career path that I originally intended, but just be a part of cultural and social change by facilitating open discussions and being a part of open discussions, I think that that's something that's really important even for people who work outside of the political sector, because at the end of the day, a cultural shift outside of politics is needed, and people who operate only inside politics are maybe not even going to be able to reach those other spaces as well.
Well, as I say, we get the government that we deserve, and if we want a better government, we have to become better people, and that's really what you're talking about there, and that's really what this conference is all about. Well, thank you so much for saying hi, and representing the student side of things. I've had speakers, I've had politicians, I've had a bunch of sponsors and so forth, and you lovely ladies have represented the students and told our audience back home in Australia about why you were here, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Topher.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Welcome back to our ongoing coverage of the Students for Liberty conference here in Washington, D.C. One of the great pleasures of these events is you meet very interesting people. Rod, you ran a very interesting workshop yesterday that I went to with a little bit of trepidation, because it's one of those moments, and I think it's such an important thing for all of us to do, but it was one of those moments where I was like, I'm pretty sure I disagree with the fundamental premise behind what you're doing, but I still think there's an awful lot of value in it. Why don't you tell us, what was yesterday about?
We did a Climate and Freedom Accord workshop. And this is a workshop that asks the question, what would an international free market climate agreement look like?
Yeah.
If you address climate only through free market means, only by removing the barriers that are in the way of people, what would it look like and how far could that get you?
And this is what I found fascinating, was the free market solution. Obviously, there's international climate agreements out the wazoo. We've got 1 million of them. Most of them aren't being actually honoured by the people that signed up to them. But the idea of a free market one is fascinating. So what brought about this? Well, we'll get to the specific proposal in a moment, but why did you choose to pursue free market solutions to this? I mean, we've already got the IPCC working on this. We've already got so many different government bodies working on solving this problem. What is it about the free market solution that you think or hope or believe would be better?
Well, listen, I come from the perspective of a philanthropic support for the freedom movement.
Okay.
My family's been involved in that for a long time. And the key strategy that has proved successful time and again is always addressing the issues of the day with a better free market solution.
Right.
No matter how ridiculous the issue is.
I see.
And in fact, the more ridiculous the issue, the more important it is to address it with a free market solution.
I can see that.
Because basically, if many people think this is a problem, right? You're going to get bad left-wing policy if all you're doing is saying, there's no such thing as global warming, or you're saying, all the left-wing policies are bad, and you're otherwise not at the table. You're going to lose, and that's what the free market movement is doing. We're losing at the national and international level everywhere on the climate issue, and so. If you pursue the free market solutions, you will block the bad solutions and you'll put in better solutions. And the win on the free market side is really big in this issue, more than any other issue.
It's fascinating to me because there's almost an element of Machiavellian rationale here, and taking advantage of the fear of the day, in a way hijacking the Hegelian dialect and saying, oh, well, they're offering that solution. We're not going to disagree with the problem. We're going to offer you a different solution to it and try and redirect that.
Sure.
So what is the specific mechanism? There was a specific mechanism, amongst other things, that was championed yesterday. Tell us about that mechanism.
Well, first of all, before that, let me just go 30,000-foot view.
Sure.
The problem of climate change is innovation acceleration. The technologies are not good enough. There's
Okay.
the problems with the fossil fuels with emissions. There's problem with the clean technologies with lack of dispatchability or lack of EV charging networks.
Sure.
Resources, not enough resources for any of this stuff. So we have to innovate, and the best way to innovate, since the time of the Enlightenment, we've found out that the best way to innovate is through free markets, right?
Sure,
Free
sure.
markets accelerate innovation. So there is no such thing as a national solution to climate change because it's a global issue. So you have to do global free market streamlining.
Okay, but still free market.
So the basic idea of the accord, this agreement, is that nations would agree to open up their markets to free trade, competition, private property rights, which are essential to regrowing rainforests and things like that,
Yeah.
to things like low taxes. And they would do that because part of the deal involves a really clever new kind of internationalizable supply side tax cut,
Okay.
where you're actually giving nations access to international capital flows. So
Okay.
this would be a reciprocal tax exempt debt, something we call co-victory bonds, loans, and savings accounts. What that means is there's no tax on interest,
Okay.
right? The cost of capital is 30% less or more depending on your tax jurisdiction.
And that's simply because the person who then lends the money receives the interest
Right.
that would normally be treated as profit. Now it's a tax exempt profit, therefore
So the
effectively
interest
a
rate is
30%,
lower, right.
Effectively
So-
a high return.
So the entrepreneurs are paying less for their projects. It's directly reducing the cost. Now, the effect we know from looking at past supply side policies like full capital expensing and things like that,
Yep.
that supply side tax cuts like that reduce the cost of new investment.
Yes.
And originally it was thought you do that, you get more investment, you get more jobs, you get more growth.
Right.
You also fight inflation because you're increasing supply.
Right.
What the original supply siders didn't quite realize is that there's an added surprise benefit,
Okay.
which is that you're decarbonizing the economy.
Right.
You actually have environmental benefits because when you introduce when you accelerate the pace that people are adopting new equipment and new technologies, the new equipment and new technologies are always more efficient and cleaner than the old stuff.
Sure.
So across the board, without picking winners and losers, you're accelerating the energy transition.
So to be clear, this isn't specific to particular technologies.
No.
This is entirely agnostic.
Not
It is
picking
simply
winners
a
and
product
losers.
that is available.
Right.
That's it.
It applies to PP&E, the same thing that full capital expensing does.
Yep.
So property, plant, and
And full
equipment.
capital expensing for Australians, that's your instant asset write-off. That's the American equivalent.
Right. There's lots of different names for it
Yeah.
around the world.
Yeah.
So but basically the way it works is that entrepreneurs, developers, fund managers, banks could issue any kind of tax-exempt debt,
Yep.
whether it's bonds, loans, or even savings accounts, that even somebody who just has a savings account can participate. It's highly
Right.
inclusive. And they could pool these into co-victory funds and invest them everywhere around the world where you have another accord nation that's signed up to this framework.
Right.
So the accord nations, they get these international capital flows, which involves both debt and equity, by the way,
Sure. Yeah.
because the equity comes along with it.
Yeah.
Right. So you get, this is a replay of 1980s supply side policy. The supply siders deregulated markets.
Yep.
They open up natural gas, power, telecoms, transportation, airlines,
Sure.
lots of them. And at the same time, they provided supply side tax cuts to provide investment for the new opportunities.
Okay.
So the Climate and Freedom Accord does the same thing. It opens up markets around the world to new investment. It provides a supply side tax cut that is decarbonizing, and then it also, it basically finances those new investments. And the Accord also suggests a couple of other kinds of clean tax cuts that are also technologically neutral, a couple of things on the equity side that drive decarbonization as well.
Can I try and repeat back to you what I think I've understood? I'm not a finance guy. I'm not a
Sure.
big money guy. Most of my viewers, they're very, very smart people, but this isn't their area. Let me see if I can encapsulate this. Essentially, for a long time, people that believe in free markets have been trying to get countries to allow more trade, to open up capital markets, to do all of these sorts of things. Essentially, what you're now doing is you're packaging that up and highlighting for those countries and augmenting through the particular strategy the carbon dioxide emissions reductions aspect of that. But you're not allowing them to access that part of it unless they also bring along with it the opening up of markets and some of the deregulation, et cetera, that you've spoken about.
Right, exactly. But, on the other hand, we're not stopping anybody from doing unilateral free trade,
of course,
or anything like that. But what the Accord really does is if you sign up, you get access to these reciprocal supply-side tax cut capital flows.
Yeah.
And you also get exempt from one Accord nation applying a carbon tax to another, a carbon border adjustment mechanism.
Yeah.
So it's a way of pushing back on the carbon tariffs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So in any event, but we're one of the things that we've done to support the discussion of these ideas is earlier this year, last year, I started the International the Climate and Freedom International Coalition meeting.
Okay.
So once a month, we have meetings, of all the think tanks, journalists, activists, politicians, Students for Liberty folks.
Yeah.
Students for Liberty is, by the way, a founding member of that coalition.
Okay.
And they are, talking about free market climate solutions. We're doing workshops here and after every Atlas regional liberty forum on what should this look like, engaging free market think tanks. The Argentinian Taxpayers Association is introducing this to the Malay government.
Yeah.
We're doing a conference with them in March.
Yeah.
So anybody who wants to join on, is welcome to look us up and become part of this. And it's a great opportunity for liberty-minded people to work together across borders. I think that the bang for the buck here is bigger than anything else in the liberty movement, because the potential to flip the script and open up markets globally on this issue is huge. So the right has been really ignoring this issue or wishing it goes away because they find it hard to argue with, free markets are destroying the environment. Well, guess what? Free markets aren't destroying the environment. They're the solution.
Yeah.
And if you start to learn how that works, then you can talk about it and win the argument.
Yeah.
And win the argument on the policy table.
Yeah.
I
find that a fascinating concept. As soon as I saw that symposium or the think tank yesterday was happening, I thought, I've got to be there. I need to see what this looks like and see what this is. And I'm very glad I was. It's a fascinating concept, and I wish wind in your sails and the sun on your back. I really hope that you find some success here.
Well, Topher, we really need somebody to set up the Pacific Region Climate and Freedom International Coalition meeting.
I'm probably not your guy, because keeping my mouth shut on my views on carbon dioxide is not something I'm very good at. But look, I wish you all the very best, and thank you so much for speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, welcome back to the Aussie Wire's ongoing coverage of the Students for Liberty conference here in Washington, D.C. And Rob Shitz, you've joined me here, or you've actually joined the conference really, in more of a corporate capacity. You're representing an organization here. Tell us a little bit about who you're representing and more relevant for what we're doing here at the Aussie Wire. What brings an organization like yours to an event like this?
Sure. I work with the Center for Independent Thought, which has two of its major projects are Stossel in the Classroom and Stossel TV.
Now, Stossel, that's John Stossel.
John Stossel,
Yeah, okay.
ABC 2020 with Barbara Walters years ago. Moved there, went to Fox Business Channel for 7 years, and then decided to leave Fox to break out into social media videos to reach a younger audience.
He was one of the earlier ones to do that, if my memory serves me correctly. He was kind of ahead of the curve on this.
Way ahead. He was the only real known libertarian in the United States.
Yeah.
And I think he's still probably the best known, and it's great to have him coming here, and he needs to get out more and see more young people.
Yeah.
That's his target audience, which is why he went to social media.
Well, and the Center for Independent Thought you were mentioning before, you've got this thing called Stossel in the Schools. What's that about? Because obviously you're aimed at younger people.
Yes, so we take John's videos and create curriculum to go with them
Okay.
and distribute those to teachers. Now it's all streaming. In the old days, it was DVDs,
Sure.
but we have 125,000 registered teachers
Wow.
and we're working to build that number up still. It's a big project, but they use our videos. They have the curriculum to go with it and worksheets, so it's not, hey, here's a 5-minute Stossel video,
Yeah.
figure out how to use it.
Yeah.
So we're trying to be as helpful to teachers as we can. And part of that comes from my experience as a high school teacher as well.
Okay, so that's your background personally.
Yes.
How long ago did you start working with the Center for Independent Thought?
When I was teaching, I was writing guides for the DVDs.
Okay.
And then I was thinking about retiring, and they offered me the job to lead Stossel in the classroom.
Nice.
And then with that came running the nonprofit Center for Independent Thought.
So this is quite exciting to me. I interviewed Jaden earlier. Now, he's the young man who got into trouble with his school because he had a Gadsden flag patch on his backpack. Now, he stood his ground on that largely because he'd been inspired by reading Tuttle Twins books. And things like what you're doing, things like what Connor, what's his name, the author of the Tuttle Twins
Boyack.
books, Boyack, thank you, Connor Boyack, are doing is really important. And to illustrate that point, I want to talk about Argentina for a moment. And we've just seen the election of Javier Milei, a seemingly impossible accomplishment. He's a libertarian head of state, first time in my lifetime. But actually behind that election was a couple of decades of him working to educate voters, to create the desire for what it was that he had to offer. You said you've got well over 100,000 teachers. How many students are you reaching, and is this growing? Can you measure the impact, or are you just kind of putting it out there and hoping for the best?
That measure the impact question is huge, and it's something that donors continually ask.
Sure.
I think
It's hard to do.
I think we reach when we start trying to measure impact.
Yeah.
Teachers, professors have this thing called the light bulb moment. You know, when
Right.
you see it in that kid's face,
Yeah.
and they get the idea, and I was never more hopeful about the future when I was in the classroom teaching,
Yeah.
because the kids would say, we've never heard this perspective before, why not? And then they got it, they
Yeah.
bought into it, this idea that government shouldn't be controlling their lives and limiting what they do. So I don't know how you measure a light bulb moment,
Yeah.
you know, and I don't know that you can give a quiz after the video and see, you know, did the kids get the idea of the video?
Yeah.
But does it impact them other than just understand it? I received an email about 6 months ago from a student. I retired in 2017, so the student had to be at least 6 years prior.
Yeah.
And the former student's email was, wow, I just saw this, and now I understand fully what you were talking about.
Yeah.
And
So you planted a seed that took maybe 6 years to mature.
6 years, at least
Yeah.
6 years. And
Yeah.
and so I've said to donors, listen, I know people come in with numbers and impact. It's not that easy.
And oftentimes the deeper work, the deeper impact, it isn't immediate. You don't have numbers straight away. So you've made the choice at an age where, as you've mentioned, you had the option of retiring. You had the option of saying, you know what, I've done my bit, I've paid my taxes, I've done my work, I'm going to go and fish or whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
For you. And you made the choice that you were going to do this instead. Now, no doubt this puts a lot of demand on your time. Here you are standing at a table at a conference for days on end when you could be out doing whatever else you wanted to do. What is it about this mission that animates you so much that you would sacrifice the very thing that a lot of people just look forward to in life?
Yeah.
Just a shallow question.
no,
you know,
it's-
no depth at all
it's-
there, you know.
It's a very deep question, and I'm not sure I've fully come to terms with why. I do know this, that I look at the future and I'm not so hopeful. And I think, listen, maybe we don't win this, but we're not going to win it if we don't try.
Yeah.
And I say to people, particularly friends of mine who have kids, hey, I'm doing this for them.
Yeah.
You know, you should be helping out some way too. And it's one of my friends, he had a daughter all through 13 years old. I said to him recently, where is she on the political spectrum here?
Sure.
And he said, she doesn't have her father's views. Now, he was a Forbes writer. He was a good limited government, libertarian, conservative. And I said, one of our donors always says, what did you talk about at the dinner table?
Sure.
Because if you're not there expressing the importance of your views, they're going to get it from their teachers or their friends. And that was my mission in school. We hear indoctrinate a lot, and I think it is indoctrination if they don't get the other side.
Well, kids are like sponges. They will soak up whatever they're exposed to. Doesn't matter what it is, they'll just absorb that. And if we're not giving them something, then yeah, they'll find somewhere else to get it. I love what you said. We can't be sure that we're going to win this, but we can, we have to try. And if we don't try, we can be sure that we won't. I often talk to people. So in Australia, we got battered pretty hard during the COVID era. Melbourne, my home city, was the worst in the world until China started welding doors shut in 2022. We really went through it. And a lot of people have asked me, why did you keep fighting? I was on the front lines of the pushback all the way through. Why did you keep fighting? Wasn't it hopeless? Didn't it seem hopeless? And to be honest, we didn't get a fairy tale ending. We haven't had a Hollywood ending out of all of that. And my response to them is, I don't care whether or not there's hope, really. My responsibility is not actually the result. My responsibility is to actually be in the fight, to have a clear conscience that I did what I could when it mattered and when it might have made a difference. Whether it actually makes a difference, that's above my pay grade. That's a decision that's going to get made by God himself, right? It's not actually up to me. It's up to me to be faithful. So last question, from an organizational point of view, why do you come here? What's the outcome that you're looking for from actually having a table, sending staff and being here?
Sure. One of the key reasons to be here is because it's a young organization.
Sure.
They're obviously already interested in the ideas of liberty because it's a Students for Liberty event, but they should know that there's people out there providing support. And John is probably one of the best people at getting these views across, the importance of limited government and markets. He points out frequently the problems with government regulations.
Of course.
Unintended consequences. So I think it's to say to them, you've got this team of people behind you.
Yeah.
We'll help. And then to ask them for help, because at times we want ideas from them, what videos can be done. We're looking at, doing one on free market environmentalism.
Yeah.
Because it's a topic that we haven't really touched.
Yep.
And our movement.
Well, it's been touched on here at the conference. That was a real mind opener for me.
I noticed one of the most packed tables is that.
Yeah.
And older people, we tend to be dismissive. But we need to go where the young people are and to try to appeal to them and help show them that we can all care about the environment. It doesn't mean we have to be top-down government force, solve all the problems, because it just creates far more problems than it solves.
Well, historically speaking, freedom and capitalism has been one of the greatest things for the environment because they've led to innovation, which has then led to, we're able to do more with less, using less resources, but it's been hijacked by the environmental movement. Look, I said that was going to be the last question, so I'll stop there, but I feel like we could talk for a very long time.
Well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. And
really appreciate it.
I wish you luck.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this special coverage of the Students for Liberty conference, and you can certainly find more Aussie Wire episodes at theaussiewire.com.au. You can follow us along on all of our social media platforms at theaussiewire.com, and if you'd like to become an insider, there's a link in the description. We look forward to seeing you again in the next episode. My name's Edwina Dixon, and hopefully next episode we'll have Topher back.